what am I trying to say? How many more?
Again, very good point. Very good point. When it comes to media, for example, all of these YouTube channels, when it comes to these big corporations like ESPN, we always talk about sports and things that happen. We can't then start to... The WNBA is one of the hottest up and coming leagues. Yes, it's been around for a long time, but only now is it getting the attention that it deserves. Let's look at the ratings of this past WNBA season, what it can be like next year, and the impact it will have on the beautiful game of basketball that, if you're watching this video, hopefully you enjoy. But yeah, without wasting any more time, guys, let's get straight into it.
The WNBA Finals just recorded its largest audience since 2001, and all of this was without the one and only Caitlin Clark. WNBA Finals racked up 1.35 million viewers, and as you can see from this chart right here, it had been over 20 years since the WNBA Finals had seen over 1 million viewers, so this was huge news.
This is amazing. I'm just going to go back to that graphic real quick. This is amazing. Again, still far off from with the WNBA, so still far off from being the highest that the WNBA has ever been. Again, I still feel like if you had some of those younger players like Cameron Brink, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese involved in the final, I still feel like those ratings would be higher, but that's neither nor here nor there. This is amazing for the WNBA. Again, the first time that they've racked over 1 million views in over 20 years. And this is what I mean when I was making all those Caitlin Clark videos, that one single Angel Reese video, and it's just the fact that as a WNBA athlete, anyone that's involved with the WNBA, this is the time to capitalize. This is the time to show investors, to show to the fans that the WNBA is a league, especially for basketball fans, because it starts after the NBA season. This is the perfect time to invest your time to the WNBA. And again, it is very important to get those investors in, because that's how you're going to be able to grow the league. But anyways, let's carry on.
Since the WNBA Finals had seen over 1 million viewers, so this was huge news for the WNBA, and the ratings have been a massive topic of discussion for this entire season. And as we saw with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever's viewership in the first round of the WNBA playoffs, there had been a lot of discussions around the topic of if the WNBA ratings would fall off when the Indiana Fever were eliminated from the playoffs. And just recently, Sue Bird talked about this on her podcast, and she actually called out ESPN and Stephen A. Smith for how they were covering the WNBA ratings. So here is what she had to say. She said, viewership numbers with Caitlin Clark are astronomical. She's a big draw. She brings in all the things. And yes, the games where she's not playing have lower viewership. But in the WNBA playoffs, and we'll use the semifinals where Caitlin obviously is not in it because her team lost, are still breaking records from previous WNBA years. They're still cracking 1 million viewers. She goes on to say, so these numbers are still really high and they're still really meaningful, and yet some people continue to flip that. I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it, I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it, and what I don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a business that ESPN is in? I want to say the semifinal games are up like 130%, and that's without Caitlin. Now, Stephen A.
And I'm just going to pause here because, again, I feel like them talking about it. So, for example, as you pointed out, Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp talking about it, that just goes on to, again, bring in more viewership. Because now people are going to be interested in being, why has viewership lowered down? Again, to a sense, any publicity is good publicity because it's going to get eyes to that product. And when we're talking about the WNBA, again, this is a league that for over 20 years we're not able to get over 1 million or a million viewers in the playoffs. So this is the time again to not really be too critical about the likes of Stephen A. or Shannon Sharp talking about the league, but because them talking about the league just goes on to bring more eyes to the WNBA. And again, even Stephen A. Smith, not to defend Stephen A. Smith or anything, but Stephen A. Smith has been one of the biggest supporters of the WNBA when it comes to putting people on the WNBA and bringing people or previous athletes or commentators or analysts to first take to talk about the WNBA. So again, is Stephen A. Smith talking about the viewership? I mean, that's kind of his job. That's what Stephen A. Smith does. He talks about things in sports. If it's good, if it's bad, he's going to talk about it. So you can't stop the man from doing his job.
Smith is no stranger to a healthy debate, and he heard what Sue Bird had to say, and he responded to that on his own podcast.
We're in the news business. What do you mean ESPN? So because I work at my day job on ESPN, I'm supposed to ignore the facts? I'm supposed to ignore the astronomical impact she has had compared to others? How Team USA was stupid for not putting her on a team to make sure you help uplift the sport even more? Don't y'all want a greater profile? Don't y'all want more notoriety? Don't y'all...
And that's the thing. Stephen A. Smith, part of his job is reporting on sports news. That's literally part of his job. That's literally part of what he has to do. He can't then just pick and choose what he's going to talk about. He can't, just because something is in a negative topic or in a negative light, he can't just then not talk about it. Stephen A. Smith, he talks about everything. Even at times, he's gone into other platforms to discuss people that have said things about him. So, to that extent, I'm going to give Stephen A. Smith some credit. He's no angel. He's not perfect. He's not always right. But in this case, he's doing his job, and you can't be mad at that. And again, it's a lot of these, I've said this before, a lot of these older WNBA players, athletes, I don't know what is their problem, that the league is doing better now. People are talking about it more. Again, when it comes to sports and news, people talking about it is good for the league. Why are you mad at that? You can't be mad at him for talking about the league that's going to help improve or grow the product. That's just silly.
Y'all want more hype? I understand that it's going on still without her now that she's out of the playoffs because the games have been great. But the fact of the matter is she swelled the interest in the sport. That made people stick around and want to watch the others. A rising tide lifts all boats, which is what we were saying, both Shannon Sharp and myself, when we addressed that issue. Why would you say a quote like that? We work for ESPN, so I'm supposed to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the facts? That ain't what we do. And while I am quite sure, Sue Bird, that you can educate me on the game of basketball, even though I've been covering it for 30 years, because you are phenomenal. You are one beautiful human being. I love you to death. You know I do. You know I do. But I would say this to you respectfully, Sue Bird. You know basketball. I kind of know news.
I agree so much with what Stephen A. Smith had to say here, and this is a topic that we have been talking about on this channel for the entirety of the WNBA season. And what I don't understand with what Sue Bird has to say is it feels like to me sometimes when we talk about the WNBA, we are almost talking about it as a charity case. And I know that sounds really harsh, but it...
Nah, it's true. Facts. It's always the case. It's always the case where we have to talk about the WNBA. We always have to be positive about the WNBA, and that's not how things work. And that's not how things work. If there are things that the WNBA is doing right, then we're gonna praise them on it. But if there are things that, for example, are not going, in a sense, the way that they should be going, then we'll also talk about it. Like, we'll talk about everything. Is all comes down to not being biased.
That's what it feels like sometimes. It feels like you kind of have to step lightly and tread lightly around the facts that are, like we're talking about here, ratings, numbers, viewership, those sort of things, and we shouldn't have to do that. That is not something that we do with any other sport. And like we talked about in a previous video, Candace Parker came out and she said that a lot of players are really sensitive.
And again, when you look at every single sports league in the world, especially the biggest leagues in the world, like the Champions League, Formula One, the NBA, Premier League, all of these leagues, they get criticized all the time. The Premier League constantly get criticized about how many games players are playing, and this also comes down to FIFA. Players are playing too many games, they get criticized on that. Formula One get criticized. For example, there are no races in Africa, they get criticized about that. They get criticized over the fact that the rules sometimes, especially with what Max Verstappen and Lando Norris have been done, the rules aren't very clear. When you look at then, for example, the NBA, again, players are playing too many games, and then some of the quality of some games just isn't there. So they should start playing less games or start playing more meaningful games, or even the All-Star game. So I just pointed out very quickly some examples wherein we criticize other leagues. So why shouldn't we also be able to criticize the WNBA? If something, well, of course, support the WNBA and, you know, say positive things about it when positive things happen, but that's kind of what happens when you become a bigger league. People are just going to talk about it all the time. And again, that's good for the league. Let's carry on.
To criticism and debate around the sport, because for many years the WNBA has been kind of the butt of jokes. It has been a punching bag for a lot of people, and a lot of people have really said some nasty things around women's basketball. There has been a ton of jokes made about the sport, so that's why there is a certain level of sensitivity to criticism. However, I think that us as media, players, coaches, all of these people need to get over that fact very quickly, because now the WNBA is reaching a place where they are joining the big leagues of other sports. And in order to do that, you have to push all of these other things to the side. We can't just keep stepping around it and saying that because you're accurately covering the ratings and accurately covering how many people were exponentially more, what am I trying to say? How many more?
Again, very good point. Very good point. When it comes to media, for example, all of these YouTube channels, when it comes to these big corporations like ESPN, we always talk about sports and things that happen. We can't then start to skew the data or lie about things just so people don't get butthurt. If people are going to be upset, let people be upset, but that's the thing about sports, or at least sports media or sports coverage, where you always talk about everything. Like, when my favorite team loses, I still talk about it. I don't shy away from it. When, for example, Lando Norris has been meaning to win races, I've been so critical of Lando Norris, but I still like McLaren, I still like Lando, but I've been critical of them. So, you being critical of something doesn't mean you hate it or you're trying to put it down. You're just looking at the facts and talking about what's been happening. So, again, if we want the league to grow, we can't sugarcoat things. We need to state things how they are. Let's carry on.
Exponentially more people were watching Caitlin Clark games than any other games in the league. Like, that is a news story that we should be covering, and we should be covering that unapologetically. I also am a fan of Sue Bird, and she knows the game, I'm sure, 100 times better than I do. She played at the highest level, Hall of Famer, all of the things. However, I do think that with some of these topics, she is just treading really lightly, and we shouldn't have to do that. It shouldn't be sensitive to be able to share what the facts.
She's not treading lightly. She's treading towards the side of being very upset at the smaller things. That's not treading lightly. Treading lightly would be if she was tiptoeing around the conversation. That's not what she's doing. She's, again, I don't know what I feel like it's not just with the WNBA. I feel like in general, when it comes to all the people, they're they're more likely to be conservative about things. Let's just put it that way. It's like they like the way things have been going. They like the order of things. And again, I understand. She's been part of the WNBA for such a long time. For people to come over and then say these negative things, or to just focus on Caitlin Clark, it can be upsetting. But at the same time, you need to look at you need to be able to look at the bigger picture. You need to be able to look at the long game, and this is only benefiting the league. And again, I've said this before in another video, and I'll say it again. And if you've made it so far to this part of the video, I appreciate you, and I hope that I can share this knowledge with you. A lot of younger girls that maybe perhaps weren't into sports or were into sports now have something even greater, something even bigger to look at, as in the WNBA, that will get them into sports. And that has so many benefits. Benefits such as they're going to be more confident, they're going to be healthier, etc., etc. Sports is a great thing, and for the WNBA, for there to be more representation at the highest level for all these young basketball fans, it's amazing. So you have to be able to look at the long game and not just focus on, oh, well, why are people talking about the viewership in the WNBA? Well, that's not, well, we have to talk about it. It's a topic. If we're going to cover things, we have to cover things. So again, this is why it's so important to look at the bigger picture, to look at the long game. This will only benefit the WNBA. I would say in my opinion, but it's a fact. It will only benefit the WNBA.
What the statistics and what the numbers are. So with that, I'm going to share those numbers with you guys. So for context, here are the numbers for the 2023 WNBA Finals. So game 1, 700,000, game 2, 600,000, game 3, 600,000, game 4, almost 900,000, and the series averaged around 728,000 viewers for the entire finals. Now
That's poor, and that is why the WNBA have been the laughing stock of the NBA for such a long time. That is so poor, and that just means that the NBA was losing money, and there was little to no interest in the league. Fast forward to this year, and again, I feel like the most important thing is not so much this year or next year. It will be in 5 years' time. It will be in 5 years' time the impact. We're witnessing, we are in the middle, or we are at the start of a change. And that is why it's so important for all of us to just get behind the WNBA and talk about things whether they are positive or negative.
we're already seeing game 1 and game 2 go over 1 million viewers. However, if we look at the game 2 matchup from the Indiana Fever versus the Connecticut Sun, they garnered 2.5 million viewers on ESPN. So that is still almost double the amount of viewers that we are seeing in the WNBA Finals. And if we take it a step further and look at the final WNBA regular season viewership averages across all networks, so these are all of the games across all the networks, including ION, including NBA TV, which not a lot of households have. If we put all those together and average them, the Caitlin Clark games had over 1.178 million viewers. So that is on average how many people were tuning in every single week to watch Caitlin Clark. All other games averaged 394,000 views. Sorry guys.
Talk about impact. Talk about impact.
One thing that I forgot to mention is when Caitlin Clark was at Iowa and she was in the national championship game, that game peaked at 24 million viewers. So I feel like it's safe to say that if the Indiana Fever ever make it to the WNBA Finals or back to that championship level stage, the WNBA viewership is going to be astronomical. It is going to be numbers.
And I've said this before, it doesn't have to be the Fever. Caitlin Clark, she can move. It might not be in her current rookie deal, but she can do a LeBron to Miami type move and make sure that she's still competitive. And if I was the commissioner of the WNBA, if I was one of the executives of the WNBA, I'll be looking to make that happen. Hey, let me tell you, I'll be looking to make that happen. It would help the sport so much. It would help the sport so much. I'd be looking to make that happen. Call it tampering, call it whatever you want. But if I was at the helm of the WNBA, if I just saw the Fever not winning and not making it to the later stages or the latter stages of the competition, I'd pull some strings
that we have never seen before. And one more stat that I thought was super interesting is that the Indiana Fever games actually averaged more viewership across all networks than the San Antonio Spurs and the Philadelphia 76ers. And those are two NBA franchises. Of course, NBA has a lot more games and a lot of them are on League Pass and this and that, and it is hard to tune in. However, those numbers make a huge statement. So like Stephen A. Smith said in his episode, and I have to agree with him here, I think a lot of the viewership for the WNBA Finals has come from the Caitlin Clark effect. Now, I do also think that the New York Liberty and the Minnesota Lynx are two great basketball teams. They play basketball the right way. There's not a lot of drama surrounding them. They haven't been part of this messy side of the WNBA, so I think those factors come into play as well. And I think this is great basketball that we are getting in the finals, and hopefully we get more of that in games 3, 4, and maybe 5. But I think that it is very naive to say that some of this viewership and the reason that people have stuck around this season to watch the WNBA Finals is not because of Caitlin Clark. This is all good news for every party involved. It's great for Caitlin Clark, it's great for the Indiana Fever, and it's great for the entire league. And if you guys want to see more of the statistics and reports, I've made a couple other videos surrounding.
Alright guys, we'll stop the video right there. I'll leave the link to her channel in the description. This has been a great video. I appreciate you guys watching to the end. And as per usual, Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, share, do all these things to please help me grow this channel. And as per usual, I'll see you guys soon.